All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to talk about a brand new way of looking at a problem that I'm sure frustrates just about every single person working in education policy. You've been there, right? You have a well thought out policy. You've secured the resources. You even have the political will behind you. And yet, when it hits the ground, nothing. Or worse, it just makes everything more complicated. Why do our best plans seem to just dissolve somewhere between the ministry and the classroom?
The usual excuses we hear, oh, it was poor execution, or they needed more training, they just don't really cut it anymore, do they? This quote here, it just hits the nail on the head. We're not talking about simple slip-ups in implementation. We are facing a deep, fundamental mismatch in the system itself. And that means we need a much better diagnostic tool.
And let's be honest, the tools we've been using are part of the problem. Our econometric models, well, they're great at showing inputs and outputs, but they completely miss the messy why in the middle. Sociological frameworks give us a moral compass, which is crucial, but they can't tell us what's going to happen next. And pedagogy? Absolutely vital for a single classroom, but it can't explain why an entire system behaves the way it does. It's like we're trying to fix a jet engine with a hammer.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start by really nailing down this diagnostic deficit. Then we'll introduce this new lens, CET. We'll walk through its 5 laws, use it to diagnose a huge real-world policy, and then, and this is the exciting part, we'll see how it takes us from just explaining the past to actually predicting the future. So let's put a name to this problem we all face. It's the diagnostic deficit. Think of your carefully crafted policy as a clear radio signal. The deficit is what happens when that signal gets completely lost in a hurricane of systemic static. The message leaves your desk perfectly, but by the time it gets to a school, it's just garbled, unrecognizable noise.
So what's the fix? Well, this new framework proposes a powerful new tool called the Computational Entropy Theory of Education, or CETE for short. Now, don't let the name intimidate you. Think of it less like some abstract academic theory and more like an engine diagnostic computer for the entire education system. It's designed to plug in and tell you exactly where the system is wasting all its energy.
At the very heart of CET is this idea of educational entropy. It's really just a way to measure the mess, the administrative bloat, the regulatory chaos, the sheer disorder that gums up the works. When a system's entropy is sky high, it spends almost all its time and resources just trying to keep itself running, instead of doing its actual job, educating students.
The next big idea is something called pedagogical channel capacity. Just imagine a teacher is a communication channel, like a fiber optic cable. Every single piece of paperwork, every non-teaching task you give them is noise that interferes with the signal. This concept says there is a hard, physical limit to how much actual teaching can get through. A brilliant teacher who's drowning in bureaucracy is just a noisy channel. Your policy signal is never going to get through clearly.
And the final piece of the puzzle is curriculum compression. I mean, human knowledge is expanding at an insane rate, and we have to somehow squeeze it into a school day. The question is, how? Do we just cram in more and more facts until students are totally overwhelmed? Or do we simplify so much that we lose the essential ideas that tie it all together? SALT frames this as a problem of information science, finding that sweet spot between detail and clarity.
Okay, so you've got these 3 core ideas: entropy, channel capacity, and compression. How do they work together? Well, they give rise to 5 fundamental laws. Rules that, according to this theory, govern how pretty much any educational system is going to behave.
And here they are, the entropy accumulation law, the channel degradation law, the compression paradox, the prediction error law, and the dependency cascade law. These 5 laws are the engine that makes the whole CETA framework run.
The first law is so simple, but it is incredibly powerful. It's basically the second law of thermodynamics, but for bureaucracy. All it says is that unless you are actively, deliberately spending energy to make things simpler, any institution will naturally get more complicated. It will accumulate more rules, more procedures, more paperwork. Complexity is the default setting.
And you can literally see this law in action. Look at this data. In U.S. universities, over about 15 years, the number of administrators grew more than twice as fast as the number of people actually teaching or doing research. That is entropy made visible. The system's energy was shifting from its core mission to just maintaining itself.
Law number 2 is something every single teacher feels deep in their bones. A teacher's ability to actually teach is not an infinite resource. For every administrative task you pile on, you are directly taking away from their capacity to teach. It's a zero-sum game. You simply cannot ask them to adopt some complex new pedagogy if you don't first clear out the administrative noise that's clogging up their channel. And to understand the sheer scale of this channel problem, look at this number: 1 million. 1 million teacher vacancies in one country. That's like trying to stream a high-definition movie, but 1 million of the cables connecting the network have been snipped in half. The system's total capacity to transmit anything is critically broken before your policy even leaves the gate.
Now, laws 3 and 4 are really two sides of the same coin. The compression paradox says that when you force teachers to cover a massive syllabus in too little time, they have no choice but to default to rote memorization. But, and here's the kicker, the prediction error law, which comes straight from neuroscience, tells us our brains are wired to learn from surprise and novelty. Rote learning is the exact opposite of that. It creates a predictable, boring environment that's just terrible for creating real, long-term understanding. And the final law is about weak links. Our education systems have critical hubs, right? Certain institutions are so central, so important, that if they start to fail, it doesn't just create a local problem, it triggers a catastrophic domino effect, a cascade that ripples through the entire network and weakens every single school. And this is what a critical hub failure looks like in the real world. These are the vacancy rates at the National Council for Teacher Education in India, the central body for teacher quality, when over half your senior positions are empty, and almost 90% of your support staff are gone. That critical node is failing. And that failure inevitably cascades downwards, hurting the quality of teaching in every classroom in the country. So we've got the theory, now let's put it to work. Let's take this new CET lens and apply it to a massive, ambitious, real-world reform, India's National Education Policy from 2020. Can CET tell us why it's been so hard to implement?
This is where the rubber really meets the road. Take a look at the Academic Bank of Credits. A fantastic idea, a cornerstone of the policy. The target was 100% adoption. The reality? Less than 1%. Now, the old way of thinking just throws up its hands and says execution failure. But CETs gives us a much sharper diagnosis. The system's entropy is already through the roof. The institutions literally don't have the bandwidth to process this complicated new protocol.
CET can also help us understand strange things like this engineering seat bubble where almost a third of all seats go unfilled year after year. The framework has a name for this: entropic monoculture. It's what happens when a system loses its diversity and gets stuck in a rut, just churning out one type of program, making it fragile and completely disconnected from what the economy actually needs. But look, explaining why things went wrong is one thing. The real test of a useful framework, especially for those of you making policy, is whether it can help you see what's coming around the corner. Can it actually make testable predictions about the future? And the answer is a resounding yes. This is what makes CTE a real tool, not just a theory. It generates concrete, falsifiable predictions. For instance, it predicts that if a teacher's administrative burden goes over a 40% threshold, learning outcomes will measurably drop. Suddenly, you can move from a vague complaint about paperwork to a hard, quantifiable line in the sand that you can build policy around. So let's end with this. This framework offers a fundamentally new way to think about your job. Maybe the goal isn't just about adding more brilliant initiatives, more signals. Maybe the most powerful and effective thing a policymaker can do is focus on reducing the system's entropy first, to clear the channel of all the noise so that any signal, new or old, has a fighting chance of actually getting through. The next time you're looking at a new reform, just ask yourself this one simple question: is this going to reduce entropy, or is it just adding more noise?